Alexander the Great is remembered as one of the most undefeated commanders in history. His empire was built not by chance, but through a series of brilliant and decisive battles that showed his courage, his leadership, and his unmatched military skill. Each of these battles tells a story of how a young king from Macedonia changed the destiny of the world. To understand Alexander's greatness, we must look closely at his most important battles. The first major battle of Alexander's career was the Battle of the Granicus in 334 before Christ. This was his first real test against the Persian Empire. The Persian satraps, or governors, gathered their forces near the river Granicus in Asia Minor. The Persians thought they could stop Alexander at the very beginning of his campaign. The river was deep, the banks were steep, and the Persian cavalry waited on the other side. Many of Alexander's generals advised caution, but Alexander was not a man who hesitated. He personally led his troops across the river, charging directly into the enemy. At first it looked impossible, but Alexander's courage inspired his men. They broke through the Persian line, and soon the Persians were in retreat. This victory opened the gates of Asia Minor to Alexander and showed the world that he was no ordinary commander. The second great battle was the Battle of Issus in 333 before Christ. Here, Alexander faced the Persian king himself, Darius III. The Persian army was huge, far larger than Alexander's forces, but the narrow plain near the river Issus gave Alexander the advantage. He positioned his phalanx in the center, his cavalry on the wings, and then he struck with lightning speed. The Persians fought fiercely, but Alexander's companion cavalry broke through the left flank and threatened the rear of the Persians. King Darius lost his nerve and fled from the battlefield, leaving his family and treasures behind. The sight of their king running caused the Persian army to collapse. Alexander's victory at Issus was not just a military success, it was a psychological triumph that shook the entire Persian Empire. Perhaps the most famous of all his battles was the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 before Christ. This was the decisive confrontation between Alexander and Darius. The Persians had prepared a massive battlefield, wide and flat, to use their numbers and war chariots. Darius had perhaps 200,000 men, while Alexander had around 47,000. Many believed that Alexander was marching to certain death. But he had a plan. He placed his phalanx in the center and his cavalry on the right. As the battle began, he slowly moved his right wing forward, drawing the Persians out of position. Then, at the perfect moment, Alexander himself led a direct charge with the companion cavalry right into the heart of the Persian line. He aimed straight at Darius. Once again, Darius fled the field. The Persian army collapsed, and the empire was effectively destroyed. Gaugamela was not just a victory, it was the moment when Alexander became the ruler of Asia. Another legendary episode of Alexander's campaigns was the siege of Tyre in 332 before Christ. Although not an open battle, it was a demonstration of his determination and ingenuity. Tyre was an island city with strong walls and a powerful navy. Most people believed it could never be taken. Alexander refused to accept defeat. He ordered the construction of a massive causeway from the mainland to the island, a feat of engineering that astonished the ancient world. After 7 months of relentless fighting, the city finally fell. This victory showed that Alexander's genius was not limited to open battlefields but extended to siege warfare and strategy. In 326 before Christ, Alexander crossed into India and faced one of his most challenging opponents, King Porus, at the Battle of Hydaspes near the river Jhelum. The Indian army had war elephants, a terrifying sight for Macedonian soldiers who had never seen such beasts in battle. The river itself was swollen from monsoon rains, making the crossing extremely dangerous. But Alexander used his mastery of deception. He pretended to prepare for battle at one point on the river, then secretly marched his army upstream at night and crossed at a different place. When the battle began, Porus's elephants caused chaos, but Alexander's disciplined troops adapted quickly. He surrounded Porus's forces and won the day. Unlike other enemies, however, Alexander respected Porus for his bravery. Instead of killing him, Alexander restored him as king and even gave him more territory. This showed that Alexander was not only a conqueror but also a leader who could recognize greatness in others. Throughout these battles, Alexander was always at the front. He never hid behind his men. He fought with them, bled with them, and inspired them. His strategy was not just about clever maneuvers but also about courage and personal leadership. His enemies often had larger armies, but Alexander had discipline, speed, and the will to win. By the time of his death at the age of 32, Alexander had never lost a single battle. From Granicus to Issus, from Gaugamela to Hydaspes, his victories reshaped the map of the ancient world. These battles are still studied today, more than 2,000 years later, because they show the perfect combination of planning, innovation, and bravery. Alexander's major battles were not just moments in history, they were turning points that created one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. This is why Alexander the Great is remembered not just as a king, but as an undefeated warrior whose battles became legends that will never fade.